Hi, hello, welcome to all. In this video, we are going to discuss about tax invoice, credit note and debit note related information. And here we will discuss first continuous goods supply of goods means what, continuous supply of services means what. Continuous supply of goods, that is continuously and there must be under contract, and whether or not by means of wire, cable, pipeline or other conductor. And here supplier invoices the recipient on regular or periodic basis. Where supply of service, continuous supply service, there will be a recurring payment, that is for a period exceeding 3 months, which a periodic payment obligation, and remaining are same, that is contract, there must be a contract and continuous supply is exist. Next, section 31. Here, tax invoice related information. Who will issue the tax invoice? Whether the registered person supplying taxable goods or services, you must issue the invoice, tax invoice, and receiving taxable goods or services, then you from unregistered person, then also he is required to issue tax invoice. And here, what is the time limit for issuance of tax invoice? There may be, if it is a goods or it is a service. If it is a goods, where goods involves momentum, or at the time of removal will be taken. In case of supply of services, then within 30 days from supply of service, or in case of insurance banking, the date will be 45 days. This is related to supply of service, and this is related to supply of goods. Where there is a momentum of goods at the time of removal, if there is no momentum of goods at the time of delivery, or if it is a case of sale or approval basis, then before expiry, before or at the time of supply, or within 6 months from removal, whichever is earlier will be taken. That is related to goods related information. Whereas services only within 30 days from the supply of service we must issue the tax invoice, or in case of banks, insurance companies, it will be a 45 days will issue the tax invoice. And in case of continuous supply of goods, or continuous supply of services, in case of continuous supply of goods, then before at the time of each successive statement, of accounts is issued, or each successive payment is received, as the case may be, whichever is earlier not, whichever is later not. Here, as the case may be, we will take, that is in the case of continuous supply of goods, before or at the time of successive statement, that statement was successive statement, or issued, or each successive payment is received. In case of continuous supply of services, where we will bifurcate into 3 categories, that is due date of payment is ascertained from the contract. If due date is ascertained on or before the due date of payment will be the tax invoice, issuance of tax invoice date. Or if you are not ascertainable, that is due date of payment you are not ascertainable, then before at the time of receipt of payment will be taken as well. In the first case, before on or before due date of payment, if you ascertain the due date. If you are not ascertained, before or at the time of receipt of payment will be considered, or payment is linked to the completion of an event, then on or before the date of completion of the event will be considered. For example, they are provided one example, that is Ritu Manufacturers Delhi supplies goods to Prakar Electronic Haryana. The goods were removed from its factory Delhi on 23rd September, where goods involves momentum of goods, that is at the time of removal will be taken as place of time of supply. So then at the time issue the invoice. So Ritu Manufacturer needs to issue the tax invoice on or before 23rd September. On or before, if you want to issue before itself, you can issue, there is no issue. And where there is example number 2, Kalyani Security Services Limited provides security services to Royal Jewelries for their jewelry exhibition to be organized on 5th October. Here, that is providing services, and here services organized on 5th October. A Kalyani Security Services Limited need to issue a tax invoice within 30 days from supply of services, within 30 days from supply of 30 days, that is on or before 4th November. If it is a bank, it will be the 45 days will be considered for the within 45 days of supply of services, that is related to section 31. And next, here where supply of service is ceased before its completion. If any supply is ceased before its completion, then at the time of seizure, you must issue the invoice. And where goods are sent or sale or approval basis, sale or return basis, then before or at the time of supply or within 6 months from the removal, whichever is earlier will be considered, that is related to goods. And goods sent out of India for exhibition or on consignment basis or exportation basis. If you are sent goods for outside India, then stipulated period, within stipulated period the goods was back, then no issue. If you are goods was not backed within 6 months, then it will be treated as sale, supply. It will be treated as supply and it will be treated as sale. Next, if the specified goods are sold abroad fully or partially within specified period of 6 months, then the sender must issue the tax invoice as and when goods were sold outside India. Next, here example, for example, Mrs. ABC sends 100 units. Mrs. ABC sends 100 units of specified goods out of India. So, he is sending 100 units. The activity of merely sending and taking such specified goods out of India is not supply. So, only taking outside India, it is not a supply. And no tax invoice is required to be issued in this case. But the specified goods shall be accompanied with a delivery challan issued in accordance with the provisions contained in Rule 55. Tax invoice is not required, but delivery challan is must. In case of entire quantity of specified goods is bought back within stipulated period of 6 months from the date of removal, no tax invoice is required to be issued as there is no supply has taken place. If the goods was returned within 6 months, there is no requirement of invoice, tax invoice. But however, the entire quantity of specified goods is neither sold nor bought back within 6 months from date of removal, then tax invoice would be required to be issued entire 100 units goods in accordance with the provisions of contained in section 12 and section 31 with rule 46 within time period stipulated under section 31(7). Okay. What are the particulars required in the tax invoice? That is important contents of tax invoice, that is related to GST number, name, address, GST number of supplier, must be GST number. Next, consequent serial numbers and date of issue, GST number of supplier, consequent serial number of and date of issue, and GST of recipient if that person is registered, and name and address of recipient if not registered, and HSN details ni provide chali. HSN details. Here name and address, name and register. If he is a person, unregistered person, then if the amount is 50,000 or more, value of supply 50,000 or more, then name and address of recipient and address of delivery along with name, state and its code will be required. If it is a value of supply less than 500, then unregistered recipients may still require the aforesaid details to be recorded in the tax invoice. It is not mandatory. Next, HSN code and description of goods or services, quantum of goods, total value of supply, taxable value of supply, tax rates, that is CGST, SGST, IGST, amount of tax charged, place of supply, address of delivery where different states different than place of supply, and tax payable and reverse charge basis, signature of authorized signatory. This all information is required at the time of issuing the invoice. And here, if it is a in case of E invoice, QR code is embedded IRN and it's also there. So if it is a E invoice shall be embedded IRN, QRN embedded with IRN. Next, Next, number of HSN digits required on tax invoice and class of registered person not required to mention HSN as per rule 46. As per rule 46, where your aggregate turnover is less than 5 crores. Then B2B supplies, then 4 digits is required, and B2C 4 digits is optional. There is no mandatory. If your aggregate turnover greater than 5 crores, then for B2B and B2C supplies 6 digits HSN code will be required. This is related to aggregate HSN details must be provided. And manner of issuing the invoices. In case of supply of goods, we must issue the triplicate invoices. In case of supply of services, duplicate will be provided. And here triplicate for the original copy for recipient, duplicate copy for transporter, triplicate copy for supplier. And in case of service, original copy is for recipient and duplicate copy for supplier. Here there is no person transporter in case of services. Next, the serial number of invoice issued during a tax period shall be furnished electronically through common portal in form GSTR 1. Next, in case of invoice in case of export of goods or services, that is supplier means for export or supply sedge or developer for authorized operation on payment of integrated tax, or supply mint or exports supply to be sedge units or developers authorized operation. Here supply means for export of payment of integrated tax, or supply meant for export of under bond without payment of IGST. They have two options. They may pay the tax or they will not pay the tax under bond. That is their option. However, where the recipient is unregistered and value of supply is 50,000 or more, instead of name of state and its code, and in case of export of invoice, name of the country of destination is to be mentioned. Next, key points from the above side discussions have summarized here are follow. So, all GST taxpayers are free to design their own tax format. There is no compulsory mandatory format. The law requires some fields are mandatory, some fields are optional, and they are provided in sample tax invoices given subsequently. And here, in case of tax period for issuance of supply is different for goods and services, where has goods for at the time of delivery and where has services at the within 30 days from the supply of service. Here, that is sample tax invoice. Next, E Invoice related information. Class of person mandatory required to issue E Invoice, where all registered person plus he with the aggregate turnover based on their PAN greater than 50 crores. Then in any preceding financial year from 2017-18 onwards, so from 2018 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, 20-21, and these 4 years your turnover was 50 crores, then you are required to issue invoice. So all registered person and aggregate turnover greater than 50 crores in any preceding financial year 17-18, then required to issue invoice. Here in E Invoice there are E Invoice schema, that is understand the standard format. First of all, you must understand the standard format and form GSTR invoice containing mandatory specified field to the reported in electronic format to IRP and applicable for all business across the countries. So here we will get the one IRP, that is Invoice Registration Portal, and E Invoice schema was that registered invoice register portal, and where it will valid IRNs. GST invoices will be valid only through valid IRN. Here IRN and advantages of invoices. Is that is accumulate auto representing of invoices into GST returns. It is auto reporting of invoices into GST return. Next, it will be auto generation of e-way bills. First one is auto reporting of invoices. It will auto report the invoices which you are provided in E Invoice. It will come automatically in GSTR return. And second one, it will auto generation of e-way bill. Next, subsequently reduction in transactional errors. It will reduce the transaction errors. And next, early payment. Here cost will be reduced and cost reduction and improved efficiency of business. Your business efficiency will be increased. And reduction of tax evasion. Next, elimination of fake invoices. This is related to advantages of E invoices. Next, E invoices statutory provisions. Where supply of goods or services. To register person, B2B by notified persons, it will be applicable. Whose aggregate turnover in any preceding financial onwards exceeds 50 crores, he has notified as a person. Okay. Next, here one example was provided. That example was a taxpayer here where the invoice is applicable means here if there is a export by notified person or B2C register person, class of register person and invoices related to ISDs and every person who is providing the information, notified persons, that persons. Next, class of persons notified to mandatory issue E invoices. Who is the person supplying of goods or services to register person by notified person. B2B, it must be applicable. And export by notified persons applicable. And B2C supplies by notified person, it will not be applicable. E invoice is not applicable. And invoices issued by ISD, input service distributor, then not applicable. And supplies made by notified persons, tax on which payable under reverse charge mechanism, then as per section 9(3), then applicable. And where special category of supplies are issued by notified person from unregistered person, you special category supplies section 9(4), attracting 9(4) on or through import of services, then also E invoice is not applicable. And import of goods, that is bill of entry, then also not applicable. So here the persons, there are 4 persons, 3 persons will be compulsory apply and remaining 4 persons is not applicable. Where first person applicable persons are where the goods are notified person, that is B2B, where turnover was exceeded, or notified persons export by notified persons, or supplies made by notified persons, tax on which payable under reverse charge under section 9(3). These 3 cases E invoice is applicable. And B2C supplies by notified person not applicable. Issues invoice issued by the ISD, then also not applicable. Next, where special category of supply are received by notified persons from unregistered persons, that is section 9(4) related through import of services, then also not applicable. And import of goods, that is bill of entry, then also not applicable. For example, one example was provided that a taxpayer says a firm of advocate having aggregate turnover of financial year is more than 50 crores is supplying services to a company. Who will the discharge tax liability as recipient under reverse charge mechanism? Then such invoices have to be reported by said taxpayer, since it is a notified person to IRP, where supplies made by notified person, tax on which payable under reverse charge mechanism under section 9(3), these persons are notified. Next, but on the other hand, who is the person as per section 9(4), there that person is not applicable. Next, exemption from E invoicing, where exemption for E invoicing, there are 4 category persons. 4 persons will exempted from E invoicing, that is special economic unit zones, insurance, banking company, financial institution including NBFC. Special schedule in insurance, banking, financial institutions, and GTA supplying services in relation to transportation of goods by road in goods carriage, and supplier of passenger transportation of services person supplying services by way of admission of exhibition of cinematography films in multiplex screens. These persons are not required to issue E invoice. They are exempted from E invoices. Next, for example, Maharaj Private Limited has an SEJ unit. SEJ was exempted, and regular DTA unit, both having same PAN. The aggregate turnover of the Maharaj Private Limited is more than 50 crores. Where more than 50 crores, then it is required to issue E invoice as considering both GST. However, turnover of DTA unit is 20 crores for preceding financial year. Okay, in this scenario, SEJ unit is exempted from E invoicing. However, E invoice will applicable to DTA units. Only the 4% were exempted there. SEJ, insurance or banking financial institution, GTA services or supply of passengers or transportation, or person supplying services by way of admission of exhibition. So DTA was not provided in exemption. So where DTA unit, because the aggregate turnover of Maharaj Private Limited in this case is greater than 50 crores, the eligibility is based on the aggregate turnover on the common PAN. Next, how E invoice is generated. Here, for generation of e-way bill, first taxpayer. Who is the taxpayer? Supplier, that is supplier creates GST invoice on their own accounting or billing or ERP system as E invoice schema, that is from invoice 1. He will prepare on his own on books of accounts and his own, which is having its own source. Next, he must upload that tax taxpayer upload the E invoice schema to IRP. Then once he has prepared the invoice, and he must upload in IRP, then IRP generate IRN. Once you have uploaded, IRP generate IRN. Next, IRP digitally sign the E invoice and QR code. So supplier creates the GST invoices on their own accounting, and taxpayer, that is supplier, upload the E invoice schema to IRP. From IRP, it will generate IRN number. From IRN number, IRP digitally signs the E invoice and QR code. So it will digitally sign the QR code and E invoice. IRP return E invoice to supplier. So IRP, what you are provided E invoice to invoices to IRP, and now IRP will provide the E invoice. Supplier share the E invoice with receiver along with QR code. That is example, sample IR invoice was provided. Where here generation of e-way bill, population relevant part of GST return through E invoicing data. That is how the E invoice is generated. IRP sends E invoice data along with IRN. Here GST system. What GST system do, or what E-way bill system do? GST system auto populate the data into GSTR 1. So where IRP sends the invoice to IRN, along with IRN it will send to GST system and E-way bill. From GST system, it will auto populate to GSTR 1 of supplier and auto populate the data in GSTR 2A. Next, E-way bill, where parameters, example transporter ID and vehicle number, reported in E invoice scheme, facilitate generation of E-way bill. So facilitate the generation of E-way bill. Next, cancellation of reported invoices. When will we cancel the reported invoices? Here, where cancellation of reported invoices allowed by the seller by reporting IRN on IRP within specified time. Next, for example, For example, an invoice is generated by SAP system cannot be read by machine which is using tally system unless a connector is used with more than 300 accounting bill software product. There is no way to have connectors for all. Next, interaction between business and invoice registers. IRP, how the work is gone, how the work is happen, there was provided. Here, first, seller has a GST prepared utility or from Excel utility. What he will do, prepare E invoice from having his information and provide the mandatory details. After that, seller will upload in IRP. IRP GST push it to IRP. Then it will generate one IRN number. And does deduplication check with the GST data, GST system, and signs GST with digital signature and add QR code and GSN. So IRN will do this all work. Next, after that it will return the digital signed GSN to seller with QR code, and it also sells the information to GST system and E invoice, which is how we are provided now. Next, QR code. QR code is QR code. This is QR code. Okay. Next, dynamic QR code. What is dynamic QR code? All B2C invoices issued by registered person whose aggregate turnover in any preceding financial year from 17-18 onwards exceeds 500 crores will have QR code. This is when you are issuing invoice from IRP to IRN. From IRN it will take care of all QR codes and reference numbers, IRN reference numbers. So the amount exceeds 500 crores. Aggregate turnover exceeds 500 crores in respect of B2C supplies shall have dynamic QR code. Next, dynamic QR code made available to buyer by such registered person through digital display. Here the purpose of providing this digital is where non-applicability of requirement of dynamic QR code. Some cases QR code is not mandatory, not required, where insurer or banking companies or financial institutions including NBFCs. Next, goods transport agency GTA services supplying services in relation to transportation of goods by road in carriage. Next, supplier of passenger transportation services, then also this QR code is not applicable. Next, a person supplying services by way of admission to exhibition of cinematography films in multiplex screens. Next, supplier of online information and data access retrieval OIDR services. In all cases QR code is not required. Next, no dynamic QR code in class of exports. That is where in respect of supplies for exports treating them B2B, dynamic QR code requirement will not be applicable to them. What are the parameters is there in dynamic QR code? Same like that, and we will add the UPI, that is supplier GST number, supplier UPI ID, pay is bank account details, and invoice number and invoice date and total invoice value and total GST amount along with breakup, that is CGST, HGST, IGST sales related information. Further, dynamic QR code should have such that it can be scanned to make digital payments. Next, complaints with dynamic QR code requirement in certain cases. What are the complaints is there? If the supplier has furnished invoice dynamic QR code for payment of this invoice shall have been deemed to have complied with dynamic QR code requirement. Compliance with dynamic QR code requirement has to be obtained examined by the following cases, where we can examine where supplier provides or displays dynamic QR code, but customer opts to make payment without using dynamic QR code, and supplier provides the cross reference of such payment made without a dynamic QR code on the invoice. Next, in these cases where using mode of like using mode like u payment, debit card or credit card or online banking or cash or contribution of various methods of payment with or without using dynamic QR code. Next, the supplier provides a cross reference proof of the payment along with date of time and payment. Next, in case without using dynamic QR code, and supplier provides a crush reference to the amount paid in cash along with the date such payment on the invoice. Next, said invoice should be deemed to have complied with the requirement of having dynamic QR code. That is case 2. Case 2. If supplier makes available to customers an electronic of payment like UPI collector, UPI interact or similar based, then it will be treated as displayed captured otherwise.